Hello, everyone. Today is February 2nd, 2025. This is day one of week 18. I'm just bringing up the date just for the sake of posterity. My name is Guillermo. I think many of you already know me. I'm going to be taking over for Julius. Julius has his hands full with a full-time job in DevOps. He's the lead of DevOps, if you didn't know. So I'll be taking over for the last handful of weeks to help you guys finish this cohort. I'm glad to be here. I'm a teacher by trade. I think everyone here knows that. Used to be a high school teacher, loved it. It was awesome, but I could barely live. So now I work in tech and it's nice. Um, no one tells me to fuck off on a daily basis. So that's different. And I know what you're thinking. Did that really happen? Of course, I think the teacher did. But are you kidding? That's like the tamest thing they would tell me. Anyway, alrighty. So today is day one of React. Does anyone know what React is? Just off the bat? Well, let me share my screen. Like spacing out here.
Based on what we learned yesterday. It's a library.
Yeah, it's a library. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Oh, yeah, that's right. So I'm still working on this setup here because I stole one of my extra monitors for my work setup, and now I need to work on this new setup. That's fine. It'll be good to go by next week. Oh, okay, it's a library. It's a framework. What is that? In its most basic sense, what is that? If someone says, "Hey, I imported a library," or "I'm using this framework," what is it?
Code someone else wrote to make our life easy.
There you go. That's really, really important to understand. When someone says a framework or a library, it's just code that someone else wrote that you can import into your project or into your application and you can use, right? It's like when someone says, hey, something's on the cloud. Oh, there is no cloud. It's just someone else's computer, right? All right, super, super important that you understand. It got kind of in layman's terms what these things are. Okay, so it's just libraries that someone else wrote. And this is a really important part about really famous libraries or frameworks. Typically, they maintain them. Like Facebook created React and then maintain React. So that means they're putting money behind it, money and developer power behind keeping it up to date, creating security patches, updating it, making it better. And kind of as the internet continues to grow incredibly unwieldy, they keep up to date with that, right? So that's really, really important to understand. And what I wanted to show you is Facebook created, oh, oops. I'm sorry. I need to get better with this. There's a bunch of people waiting in the waiting room. Sorry, guys. I'm new to this account. Typically, I don't know if I could make a default where everyone can just come in, but I'll figure that out. Sorry about that. So the only thing that you've missed, everyone that was in the waiting room, sorry about that, is we're discussing what a library or a framework is because today is day one of React. And it's just a library or framework. It's just code that someone else wrote and really important thing that someone else maintained. If it's a library or if it's a really famous library or a framework, someone else pays money to maintain it and keep it up to date. So super important thing to keep in mind. Facebook created React, and I don't have a Facebook account. If now I would show you that, but I pulled up. Oh crap! I pulled up this, and I think this is what Facebook looks like. I haven't been to Facebook in like 15 years, so I'm not really quite sure what it looks like. But if you look at this page, let's just assume that this is the most current Facebook page. If it isn't and you know it differently, that's okay. For our purposes, this is good. And this kind of, to me, kind of is a really good example of why Facebook ended up creating this React library. And the really big famous thing about React is it's made of components. If you don't know what that is right now, that's okay. But they're functional components that can keep state and you can render small pieces. And this is a really important part here. You can render small pieces of a web page independently of one another. Why is that important? Can anyone tell me?
Less time, less space, then I have to reload the whole page.
Exactly. You don't want to re-render the entire DOM tree if 90% of the DOM that your user is looking at didn't change. The word expensive gets thrown around in software engineering quite a bit. And there's two things you need to keep in mind when someone says expensive. The first one, it's literal expense. Memory and compute take up money, that you spend a lot of money. So that's expensive. But in terms of how long something takes, that's expensive too. So it's twofold. In computing, in programming, in software engineering, when someone says something is expensive, it's literally expensive, compute and memory, or time-wise, it takes too long. And that's an expensive call. I'll give you an example. At Amazon, when you go to the Amazon webpage right here, you see how it ends right here and the end of these socks right here in the corner get cut off? This is what they call above the fold, right? And they've done research, a lot of extensive research, that this page must load incredibly quickly because for every like a fraction of a second that it takes to load, Amazon loses X dollars because people will just go to the Walmart webpage or the New Balance webpage and buy what they needed to buy. Make sense?
Mhm.
So everything that's above the fold needs to be as fast as humanly possible for an e-commerce site like Amazon. And this is not unique to Amazon. I pulled it up because it's a good example. But this is true of any e-commerce site. Above the fold, that load time is critical to their business. Oh, make sure I don't. Oh, I gotta keep checking that. Okay, cool. I think that's everyone. Okay, so I'll close that. So let's look at the Facebook, profile page. If you look at it, you can tell that a lot of pieces or components are exactly the same. My favorite thing to look at that reminds me of React is when you look at your friends list. And this is how it used to be back in the day. I don't know if it's changed, right? But if your friends are on, what kind of color is next to them? Little red, what color dot?
Just colored as bright.
Yeah, it's green, right? And if your friends are not online, what color is next to them?
Looks
I
like
think
blank.
gray. Yeah, like gray, or it's not colored, or red, or whatever the case may be, right? Those are all the exact same component. The only thing that's changing, and we're going to get into it. I think it's day 2, but if we finish a little early, and today's lesson is pretty light, so I might go into day 2. Not sure if we're supposed to do that, but I'll figure it out later. So that's the same component. They're actually just reusing the same component, right? So in here, I would have to go into the library to look to exactly what it's called, right? But it would be something like, friend card, right? And all of these would be friend cards. And then the only thing that would be different would be the props, right? What's passed into that component would be an image, a name, and the color of their dot, right? But they don't have to create, I don't know how many friends people have on Facebook, 1,000? I don't know. They don't have to create 1,000 different components for each one. They just create it once. And they reuse it, and they pass 3 props to it. Whatever their profile picture is, whatever their name is. And a simple Boolean. Are they online or are they not? Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they've incorporated this on Facebook because I've been off so long, but I can't remember if I'm making this up, but did it used to tell you how many minutes since a person was online? Or is that an Instagram thing? I'm getting super confused.
Yes,
Yeah,
Facebook tells you that.
Yeah. Okay.
How many
so
minutes ago that person was online?
There you go. And that's just what? A date time, right? Date time from the last time that they logged out, posted to current time. A simple subtraction. They were online 23 minutes ago. And that's all that is, right?
Does that mean there would be one component that would show them, hey, the person's online, and then another component it would switch to that would maybe change the color and give the date time when they were last online and they're not? Or is it all in one component?
No, it would just be one component and the props would be different. We haven't really got into props, and I think I'm
Okay,
jumping the gun a little bit,
yeah.
but the props would be different. What goes into that component is different, but the base component's the same. Notice your friends, they all look the same, right? Same styling, same everything. It's just one component. And here's what's really great about component-based frameworks. That's why React is so popular, right? When it's time to change that component, how many places do you have to change it? One, because it's only one component used millions, maybe even billions of times. I think Facebook has like 1 billion users, right? I don't remember. right? Use it, use billions of times. It's just one component. Like if I was to go into the Facebook code base and look at that friend card, it would only be one. Now, if I was to look at each post, it would only be one too, right? And what's inside of it is just different props. Image, maybe, short message, X characters, and then thumbs up, thumbs down, or hearts or whatever, right? The emojis. And then you get into, hey, what people commented on it, right? And comments could be its own component. So it'd be a card component that holds other components inside of it, right? But that reply component, that's just one. Make sense? Okay, so that was kind of a big crash course on Facebook and kind of components and stuff. But now we're going to kind of back up a little bit and kind of start and try to build a very, very simple React app from the beginning. But I just wanted to give you kind of an overview of why this is so powerful. Because it kind of incorporates kind of the best practices of software engineering, right? It keeps everything dry. It keeps everything to a minimal load time, right? If it's time to change something and there's a mistake somewhere, you have to go in there and change it exactly one place. You don't have to go across a code base, right, and change it in a bunch of different places. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, if you haven't figured this out already, now it's a good time to figure it out. But why functions tend to be agnostic almost always. Why? Because you can pass anything to it and they're reusable. Right? You always heard, hey, don't hard code anything. Yeah, if you hard code anything, how many functions they're going to have to create? 1 million? I don't know. Depends how big your application is. Right? And here's kind of a misnomer that I didn't know. When you go to be a developer, you think, hey, I'm going to write all this code. And that's not actually true. You actually try to write as little code as possible. Why? Because the minute you start writing code, you start breaking stuff, and you start, introducing errors into everything. So the best solution you're going to come to figure out is a no-code solution. Right? If you can automate something or integrate something between third parties that you don't have to write a lick of code, or you have to write very little, or just a simple script, that's typically the best solution, right? You're not going to go out monkey patching, building these big applications, right? And a lot of the time, what they don't tell you is, hey, you're learning React here, but I'll give you an example. Like at Amazon, we have Cloudscape. We have an internal library that's internal, is now outward facing. You would, unless you worked there, you would have never used it, right? And you have your own libraries that are incredibly opinionated, right? That will force you to do things a certain way because that's the way that they want them done. And you can't really change it, right? So you'll meet with a bunch of UX designers and they'll be like, oh, this is going to be better, user experience, but then you're limited by the tools that you have, right? So you're going to have to adjust to that. So here we're learning React, but whatever job you end up getting, you might be stuck on Vue. You might be stuck on, this is what they don't tell you, some internal framework your company has that's unique to them only, and you're going to have to learn it. The ideas are more or less the same, so they do apply, but you're going to have to learn that on the fly as well. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you a real example. I was playing with an internal library where the nav bar needed to be 7 elements, but the internal library only held 6. And the UX team wondering why we can't get 7. Because with the library that we're using can only use 6. And they're like, you can't change it? No, you would have to rewrite the entire library. Okay, change the Figma design. Make sense? Yes? So that's a lot on frameworks. But back to the thing. You guys can follow along. This is a pretty straightforward lesson. We're going to use Vite. And I don't even know what Vite was until about 15 minutes ago. Apparently, it's a build tool to help you build a React application. This seems like an over-engineering thing. React is pretty straightforward. I don't think you need a build tool for it, but we're going to use it because that's what the lesson says. Everyone ready?
We are on day 2.
Oh, we're on day 2? You guys did?
I mean, I hate to, like, I don't,
Yeah,
part of
we're
me
on day
wants to see how if there's any additional things you give us, because I like to see different instructors, so they kind of teach different and give different
Who taught day
information. But
one?
yeah, we are on two. Jordan did.
Okay. It was short. Okay. He didn't say anything. He just said something like, hey, start on day two. All right. No worries.
I mean,
Okay.
everything that you've gone over so far has been like insightful and new, so we haven't really started the lecture yet.
Yeah, no worries. I thought I'd give you the overview because it's important to understand that stuff. And I think sometimes you have this like misconception that hey, when you get to your job, you're going to be using these really popular frameworks, and a lot of the time you won't be. You'll be using whatever internal tool that maybe is not as good, and that's just because that's what your job has. So it is what it is. Okay, cool. I'm gonna go over just day one real quick. If there's anything that I think, any questions on day one as I go over it, actually, this just shows you how to bootstrap it, a hello world application. I guess the main thing that I want to point out here, if you don't understand some of this conceptually, that's okay. You only have to really pay attention to that app.jsx file for now, and that'll be enough to get started. Any questions on day one? So you guys already created one? You did a little Goose website?
That was the challenge, yeah.
Did we finish this?
I mean, I did. Did anybody else?
Yeah, I did. I pushed it up. I didn't put all the text in there because I didn't want to type it all out, but yeah, generally.
I would love for someone to go over their answer. That's typically what I do. If someone finished it, just go over how you went tackling the challenge, 5-7 minutes, nothing too serious. Would anyone care to share? Give you a minute or two to load it up, share their solution, just so even if you didn't finish it, that's okay. If someone did finish it, just share what you got. I'd love to see your thinking on how many components you used, kind of how you went about it. And we'll use it as a learning experience for everybody else. If I see something that is not too good, I'll point it out so we can improve right there and then.
I wouldn't mind sharing mine, I guess.
Yeah, okay.
You just have
That
to
works.
remember how to run it.
Yeah, for sure. NPM run dev, I think.
That
Alrighty.
sounds familiar.
All right, Sean's gonna share his. We're just gonna just listen, honestly.
Let's see. Oh, it's right there. Um, where are we? Let's just copy that. Port 5173. Oh, come on.
You can just click that link. Yeah.
Oh, control click. That's what it was. I was hitting the wrong button. All right. So, one of the things that I was thinking about when I was making this was like everything gets piped into the app.jsx, right? So just like Jordan taught us, I made a components folder for all my personal components. And then all I really had was a content folder. We'll start from the top and work our way down. So from the top, importing the Black Goose image. I put that into assets, and it's just a PNG file that I made an image tag that refers to that file, right? So importing from the assets that PNG and just puts it up there. And then for the actual title, I kept that in the app.jsx as well. And then all the CSS from the app.css is what does all this, right? Below that, as well as the rest of it too. Now getting into the content.jsx that I import, which is my personal component. It's just honestly a giant, almost like an HTML page for the most part, with everything in there, trying to space out the lines with break lines to make it look like the image that we were given to try and duplicate. And then once I got all that content and everything in there and I got it imported to app.js, it was just styling it through the app.css in here, just like you would do an HTML page as well. So I don't know. That's pretty much it. Anything you want to go over for that?
Yeah, for sure. On this page, app JSX, what could we've improved on line 12?
Honestly, I don't know. So I remember inline styling, but But you wouldn't want to do that really because that's not usually just keep everything in the app. This .css.
This is a little overkill for such a simple one-page application, but let's say it was 3 or 4 pages. What would you change on line 12?
Hmm.
Think about what lesson 1 was about.
Did you create a component for it?
Yeah, it would be some kind of title component, right? Because you're probably going to use that on page 2 or 3. I know this is a one-page application, but keep that in mind. That would be a
Okay.
hard code. And here's the thing, really the main I mean, the main thing that you really need to learn from lesson 1 is that everything is component, right? And how you populate anything in a component is typically props, which I think we're going to get into here today. Actually, if I think about it, I think it's use state and props. So actually, maybe you didn't know that, but that's okay. So on line 12, you would expect if I went to like an app.jsx file, I would expect all of these to be components, and I wouldn't
Oh.
expect any H1s here.
Okay, so all in app.jsx would be for between here to just be all of these then.
Exactly, within a
Okay.
div or within that. I think the div with no name. I forget what it's called, the
This is the
fragment or whatever.
fragment, yeah.
There you go. Yeah, the fragment. So I would expect all of these to be components. And actually, to a slightly larger extent, click on content. Same thing with this. You bolt it all in one. Go to content. Right. Look at your H2s. Those all should be components too. This should be like you could even name it like H2 component.
Inceptual components.
Does that make sense?
Okay, so
And yeah, exactly. So H2 should be, and your paragraphs probably should be like H2 description component or something like that. And that way you could utilize it not only here, right, but on the next page and the next page.
so when you
But would
put-
the actual text be? I'm trying to just visualize
that was my
how,
question.
yeah, like, because it's where would you put the text? I built mine a little different, but it's kind of the same questions of, I kind of understand the, like, maybe you want, like, I did a logo component and I also put the name there, but I see like maybe you could split those up. That way you may only want to use the actual logo or only want to use the Black Goose Bistro. But for these, why would you have a whole component for H2 if that's already done in your CSS if you have to change the text?
Because H2, the H2 component, it's really just like I don't know what you would even call it, like a second header or something. You're probably going to use that throughout your web page, and you don't want to keep creating just H2 elements. If they're all
But isn't it
specifically
created
going to
in
have
the
the same
app,
standard.
the app CSS?
The app CSS, click on the app CSS. So I think the really important thing, actually 2 things. One thing, creating a component for the logo is actually a really smart idea, right? Because you could actually even resize it, use it on the main page, and then use it as a smaller version of itself on a different page, right? So that's just a style component, but the image is the same. So that's actually a really good idea, right? As far as the H2s are concerned, that's how I would break it up. And right now, it's really kind of hard to understand it because it's like, oh, it's just 3 lines. Who cares? No, but even when you have an application that actually is external facing, it's going to be enormous, right? And even one line, one H2 that you're going to reuse would be too much to go edit each one individually, right? So don't get confused between a component, right, and its styling. Yes, you style it with CSS, right? But that still should be a reusable component.
So this is how I'm visualizing this. We have an H2. If we made another component, H2.jsx, and that's going to have this written into it, like the restaurant. And then we'll have another H2 component that's going to have catering written into it.
No,
And
I think just one, and you would change the title, whatever it is, it's rendering, right? But it would be just an H2 component that's styled in orange, like you see in that image.
That's what I'm missing as a puzzle piece, how to do that.
Yeah. We'll get into it right now. But right now, really the only thing that I want to emphasize is this idea of components, because that's going to become really, really important later on. You could have gone a completely different way, right? You could have even created like an unordered list, right? And made that a component, which would have been kind of weird. But that would have been more or less closer to the most important thing you need to learn, which is, hey, everything needs to be a component.
The way I'm understanding how you're describing it is a component's a template. And there's another way
Yes.
to fill that template.
Yes.
I don't know how to fill that template.
Yes, you haven't got there yet, but
Okay.
the main thing from lesson one yet, you haven't learned state, you haven't learned props. I think we go over that today. So you'll get that information today and probably tomorrow. So that's okay. But really the main thing of this exercise, hey, everything needs to be a component. Pretty simple.
Alrighty.
Anybody want to share theirs? So, someone do something a little bit different? It's okay if you break it up into components. I'm sure we'll learn
I
something
can
from you
show
sharing what
mine.
you have.
Mine's a little different. 1 second. You see my screen?
Yeah.
So my component is, I just used the link. I didn't actually bring in the image. I just used the link that we were given and then did the Black Goose Bistro, and that was like my component. But I understand like it would be better, right, if we made a component for this and then a component for this, what you're saying?
Yes.
And then I updated like, the different headers here. And then this I kind of use as like my HTML.
Exactly. So the hard thing about understanding React at first is like it's like HTML components, but it's .html. So when you go to try to write it, you write it like it's HTML, but it's not. And just the same thing here. You see these H2s, that should just be an H2 component. Same thing with H3.
Okay. Yeah, that'll be good to, I guess, see going forward. Keep that in mind.
Yeah, that works. This is a little closer though. Any other questions about lesson one, guys? And we can jump into lesson two. Boom, 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 boom. Alrighty. Let me move this to the side and we can get started on day two. Okay. You can see my screen, right? And we're here. State and conditional rendering. Okay, we're not going to get into props today, but we're going to go over state and conditional rendering. This is where your ternary operators are going to come in really handy. Okay, cool. I think I looked at this too, actually. It's pretty straightforward. Actually, why don't we just start with creating you can start from day one. You can start on that project or you can create a new one, however you want. I don't have this one, so I'm just gonna go ahead and create it. Why is this not working? Is the button not working? Yeah, it is. Okay. I'm gonna create this example. Let's do React. Cool. And then you can see that I have my React project. And then I can just bootstrap it. You should be creating a new project right now, or just going into your day one project. We can continue from there. I'm sure it'll be fine. Actually, it's a good thing that I'm doing this. I can show you something real quick. npm run dev. Oops. Try that again. Oh. Oh, and I can go ahead. Actually, I'm going to move this up so I have access to it, and I can just open it. And this is kind of what I was telling you before. if you don't understand the connection here, just grabbing the root element of the DOM and then rendering the application, you can go in here. Anytime you start a new project, you could delete almost everything. This is really the only important one. And this is where you're creating your Hello World application. Yesterday, they taught you this, right? You can delete all this stuff and maybe you just rebuild it. Yes? Yeah, they taught you that? Someone say something?
Yeah, he worked through it and kind of showed us what everything was and where it was showing up, and if he got rid of stuff, where it's going, when it's gone, and when it's coming back, and what things are. But
Perfect.
yeah.
Okay, cool. And this just goes over showing the image, components, app.jx, the fragments here, the shorthand for fragments, which is just this, and then bistro. All right, cool. That's it. So today we're going to go over state and conditional rendering. A React component is reusable building blocks, kind of what we're talking about. It encapsulates its own logic, state, and rendering. These components are often combined and compose the final user interface. Here's how it works. This is known as a hook, and this is probably the most important React hook. So you really need to understand this one, and it's the first one. So here we go. Import use state hook. Here, I think actually if we go to our application, I'm pretty sure, there you go. And this is where the counter is. Use state, here's my counter. But let me get rid of all this. Yeah, let me get rid of all this. Actually, I don't actually need this even. I can create an H1 here. Hello. I don't know if my keyboard is acting up or it's on battery. Here we go. Or I'm just incompetent. There you go. And then we should see hello here. Didn't work. What did I mess up? I don't need this.
Web server in your CLI.
Oh, yep. There you go. This should work now. Should say hello. Yep. There you go. There's my hello. All right. So import use hook. I actually already have it here. It's my count. I already have this count, set count 0 right here. Boom, count, set count 0. Access update state. And this is a simple example here, right? Where we can update the state on a button click and it creates a button. So I'm literally just going to copy this. Uses parentheses here, I'm pretty sure. There you go. There you go. What's going to happen when I click me?
Gonna go up by 1. It should.
It's going to go up by 1. Let's see. Click me. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, cool. What's happening here? I just went over that really fast. I didn't really read most of it. What's happening?
It's changing the state that
What is that? What state?
is it set state. Was it used? Will you go back to your code?
Yeah.
Yeah, set state and set count. So
Yeah, but what state? I'm not trying to confuse anyone. What state?
the state of the value of the integer is what's being changed.
Layman's terms.
It's incrementing the
Not answering my question. What is state? What is the state of the component? I'm not trying to trick you. Like what is state? It's what?
the state of the object.
Kind of. What's the value right now? Like right now, what's the value? What is the user seeing?
The value of 15.
Is it 15? Yes. All right, so the state of this component is just what the user sees at this very moment. Not when I click it, because the state's going to change. At this moment, it's 15, right? So useState keeps the state of that specific component, of that specific component. Does that make sense? And the only thing that's happening on line 10 is on the button click, I am calling the function set count, and I'm incrementing by 1. And I know what you're thinking. Shouldn't that be plus plus or plus equals 1? Yes. Why is it plus 1? I have no idea, but you're right. It doesn't make any sense. That's all that is happening, right? And the useState hook in React, you destructure it into 2 things. The actual variable that holds that specific value or state, and the function that changes the state. Every time, no exceptions. This is the right way to update state of a component. Simple, yes?
Does the function have to follow that syntax? It has to start with set.
Yes. It can be counter, and then it's going to be set counter. It can be donkey, but then it's set donkey. Make sense?
So count is the beginning state when this first loads, which is
Yeah.
use state 0, whatever that 0, whatever that is, right?
Yeah.
Where it says use state 0, and then set count, and then count the count in set count refers to the component because it's. Does that mean that because it's capitalized in one spot, right? Where it says set count, it's a capital C. Does it have to be capitalized? I ran into an issue like that yesterday, where the component has to be capitalized because it wasn't reading it when it wasn't.
If it's an actual component, look at line 4. It has to be capitalized. It's my understanding.
Okay,
Now we can
like,
try it here in a second, but if it's an actual name of a component, it must be capitalized.
so like set donkey, how it says it right now, donkey isn't capitalized. So I'm wondering if is it going to work?
I think it will. Let's see.
Oh.
Yeah. So I know, especially early on, and even with new technology, you're not quite sure if some of the words are keywords, and it matters what the prefix is or what the camel case is. Sometimes it does matter, but sometimes it doesn't. And that's just having kind of a deep understanding of whatever technology you're working with. Like this, I didn't know if it was going to work or not, honestly. I thought that it would because I remember messing it up before and it worked, right? But if you really, if you actually follow the convention of the language, it should be set donkey like this in camel case. Right?
All right, so in this syntax, set is just basically saying change the state. And when you
Change this state.
right.
This state, and this is
yeah.
really important because it's very possible that you have a page like the main landing page of Facebook. How many states are in that Facebook page? Just imagine if you've ever logged on to Facebook or any social media and they're using React or reusable components. There's multiple states on that page, right? Not just one. It's not just a simple counter, 1 to 15, right? There could be 30 states on that page, 80, 100, I don't know. Make sense?
Yeah, so set this state of this component, basically.
Yes,
okay.
yes. And there could be 1,000 components on that webpage. Right? Like if I go back to the Amazon, actually, I don't know what the front end framework of Amazon is. This or the checkout page, there has to be dozens of states that are being tracked simultaneously, right?
Did you change the state to a string? Just to see if my learning is correct? Because when you do set donkey parentheses, well, if it's 0, if it starts off as 0, like this use state is 0. And then if you set donkey parentheses, donkey equals string donkey, would that change it to like that variable of donkey to a string so it shows you donkey?
This?
Yeah.
What is this function going to do?
because when you did it before, it was just donkey plus 1. So it made me think that donkey was a integer.
Donkey is an integer because the initial state is 0.
Oh,
Look
and
at
it's a
line 5.
const, right? And it's a const, so you're not changing the type.
I don't know what this would do. Let's check. That breaks
Nothing.
it.
Yeah, nothing.
Yeah. So, yep.
So it would have to start out as a string? Well, how would you change? How would you
You
change
can,
it? Go ahead.
if you want to change, right now it's initialized to a number because we're counting. But if you wanted to, I think there's one of this. I don't know if they changed it, right? But I think one of the early assignments is like Hangman for React, right? And when it deals with letters, right, you can reassign letters, right, or strings, just the same. You're just changing the state, and instead of the state being the string donkey, it can be an elephant. It can be anything, right? But you can reassign by changing the state, right? But this is the easiest example when you're starting out because it's just an incrementation, right?
Raj.
If this was get donkey, I don't think this works. Let's see. Yeah, it does. So set's just a convention. It won't actually inhibit it. It could be get and this works. I don't know that. There you go. But again, convention, that would be set. Questions? You guys have some really great questions. I know some of it seems like the question is kind of out of left field, but no, I mean, that's how you learn. Test it out. Because I promise you'll probably make some of these mistakes before. I mean, here in short order. All right, so that's use state. Use state right here is a number, but I think maybe, actually, if there isn't an example, we'll do an example of a string here shortly. Let's go into conditional rendering here. Now that we have explored the power of use state hook in managing state within functional components, super important there. Managing state within functional components. You're going to have many of them. You can have multiple state variables, right? Let's move on to focus on another crucial aspect of React development, conditional rendering. And this is a really, really important piece to React. You use conditional rendering all the time. You guys are ever on a website and you can sign in. You can sign in or you can create an account. Yes? You ever click sign in and it takes you on a page? Will you ever create an account and it takes you to a different page? You notice that when you hit on create an account, the login disappears. And now you just have a create account page. That's just a simple conditional. If you create, that means you can't log in because you don't have an account. If you log in, you don't need to create an account because you already have one. Yes? So anytime you go to any of those web pages, that's all it is. It's just a conditional render. Nothing more, nothing less. And you'll use the same thing for your personal project on your login page, if you have a good one. If you have like a shaky one, it's truth be told, some of you guys in here are gonna have some crappy login pages, right? Where you're gonna create login and you're gonna press login on your app and your create an account won't disappear. You fucked up the ternary. Actually, I don't know if I'm supposed to swear on these videos because they're posted to the official YouTube channel. I guess I'll get in trouble later. I'm gonna do better, Ron. Sorry. So anyway, so when you notice that happened, right? They messed up the conditional rendering, right? And mark my words, there's gonna be at least 2 of you, at least 2, maybe 3 of you do that. All right, so pay attention. So this is not you. The use state hook allows us to store and update dynamic data within our components. However, what if we want to selectively display or hide components based on certain conditions? This is where conditional rendering comes in. And this is the normal if-else statements that you're used to in JavaScript. You're going to see more ternaries in React because it's a simple if-else condition, right? And ternaries are slick, so you'll see them all the time in React. Can you do it this way? Yes, Is anyone going to do it that way? No. This is what you'll see. And this is kind of the example that I was giving earlier, right? Sign in prompt or the welcome banner. A simple conditional render saying, hey, is this person signed in? If they are, welcome. Pull their email or their username from the database and show it to them, right? Like actually, if I go to Amazon, I think my account is on there. Says hello, Guillermo Aguilar, right? It only knows that because I'm already signed in. Right, so it shows me, it grabs my name, and that's all it is, right?
Is that being held in your local storage from when you signed in the first time?
Local, yeah, probably through a cookie is my guess, yeah. But after a while, I think they expire, right? Because then you have to like log in again. I mean, it takes a while, I think. I think I signed in like twice a year, maybe. Cool. Unless you sign in from another computer and it boots you from your login. And then when you get to your normal computer, you got to do it again, which is just a safety thing. All right, so the and operator can also be used for conditional rendering. And this is one that people mess up pretty frequently, so listen up. The operator works by first evaluating if the expression on the left-hand side is true. If the expression is true, it executes the expression on the right. If the expression on the left is never true, the expression on the right is never executed. So keep that in mind. And the result of right-handed, yeah, I just said what I just said. However, if the expression on the left is negative, it stops and it returns false. So this is an example right here. In this case, if the left hand is signed in and evaluates to true, then the right hand side shows you this welcome banner. And what I want you to do as you're creating the simple React to-do app, right, is play with not only the ternary operator, but also this and operator. And you can do it very simply. You could just return, I know here it's returning components here. This is actually a Boolean. This is just a variable holding a Boolean probably. And this is a component. Sometimes this can be two components, or this can be some kind of function or something, and this can be a component, but you don't have to do that. When you're doing the to-do app, just do two strings. Or if something is true, show this string. If it isn't, don't show it, right? Just to understand kind of how it works. Make sense? Like this is kind of the example I was trying to get at. Here, there's two components, but if you were just messing with it, this could be a string. Hey, not logged in. Hey, logged in, or something like that. Render it on your to-do app to make sure it works, and then you can kind of literally just replace the strings with components. Make sense? Yeah. Boom. All right, let's look at the challenge. Today is a simple React to-do app. Oops, give me 1 second. I typically like to get people started with this, so we're gonna get it started with you guys. I haven't quite looked at this, but we're gonna mess around. Get this started here. I'm literally just gonna go off of this. Boom. All right, let's look. All right, so this is your task for today. We'll take a break after this, and then we'll come back and we'll get started. And do they typically break you up into individual rooms?
They open up breakout rooms, yeah, and just
Okay,
have us
cool.
work
Like
on
individual breakout rooms?
some of them had us go to individual ones. Some just open up a bunch and let us go pick one. So it's really up to you.
Here's my spiel. Almost all the work should be individual, right? Because what I've found that people will lean on other people that know what to do, and then they'll kind of skate by it, which is totally fine, right? Whatever. But then they learn a lot less. And I got to tell you, if you've known any friends that gone through some technical interviews, man, and they failed one, it's like the nastiest feeling in the world. Actually, I'm going to pause this right here because I'm about to say some crazy stuff. Give me 1 second here. Pause. But it will be once or twice or three times, so that's okay. Anyway, simple React to-do list. Let's get started together. Everyone go ahead and open up a file that you're going to use, bootstrap an application, and let's just kind of maybe pseudocode a little bit of this. Let's see how this is going to look. How does that sound? And after this, I promise we'll take a break. All right, so simple React to-do list. In this challenge, create a to-do list application using React that allows users to manage their tasks. The application should be implemented using components, use state hook, and conditional rendering. Have a to-do list component that serves as a main container of your application. So these are my requirements. Have a to-do list component. What is this going to be? What am I building? Have a to-do list component that serves as a main container for your application. What kind of component is this going to be?
A list, unordered list, or ordered list?
Yeah, why not? Unordered list component. So I know I'm going to have that component. Oh, against spellment. Unordered list component. All right, definitely creating that. All right, let's look at number 2. A to-do list component should maintain a list of tasks, to-do items. All right, so what else am I going to create?
Task.
On click.
You're jumping ahead. It says it right there. What kind of component is this going to be? Keyword component?
A list.
No, we already have the list. We have an unordered list component. What component is bullet point 2 pointing at?
Task.
Yeah, so you can call it a task component or a to-do item component, whichever one you want. It's the same. So I have at the very least 2 components. I have an unordered list component, and then I have a to-do item or task component. Yes? That's 2 components everyone's going to have. Then let's look at 3. Provide an input field for users to enter new tasks. What is this going to be?
Input field.
Yeah, I'm going to have some kind of input field component. Input field component. Think back to the Facebook UI, if you're familiar with it. You can search for friends, right? On a couple different pages. That search bar is the same. It's just a search component. And they just use it on multiple different pages. And you can even pass, you know how sometimes they have like a grayed out in the search bar, it'll have a grayed out like a phone number or something where it asks the user what it wants. That's just a prop. So they pass a prop to it and it can be last name or phone number or anything, but the component is the same. They just use it different places, right? They import it in 1,000 different places and they can use it 1,000 different places if they want, right? So yeah, you have an input field. Here, you're only going to use it once, right? But that's okay. It's a small application, right? You're going to have input field component for sure, right? And let's look at 4. Allow users to click on a task to mark it as complete. That's a typo, sorry. The task should disappear when clicked. So the users to click on the task to mark it complete. What kind of component is this?
Like a checkbox.
Radio
some sort.
button.
Yeah, it could be a lot of different things. I mean, however you want to do it. It could be a radio button. It could be a checkbox. It could be a trash can. I guess trash can would delete it, right? Yeah, whatever. Component. Cool. All right. So this is what we have. Give it a title. Let's do 0 here. Let's give it a title. Fancy title. Okay, so you have at the very least 2, 4, you have 4 or 5 components here. That's what you're going to create your to-do list. What's the container of this to-do list? All these components are going to go inside what?
So your
You mean
app.
like a div
yes,
or
Yeah, it's going to be inside a fragment or whatever. Yeah, but it's going to go inside which of these components? One of these components holds kind of everything. Which is it?
Is it the app one?
Yeah, but just here, just on my screen, line 19 to 24, one of these components holds almost everything. I'm probably asking it poorly, right? The UL list component, all the components are going to be in there. That radio button, it's going to be inside each task, right?
All right, so if I imagine like a pipeline, once again, it's gonna be like main.js is the very front, then it goes like app.js is in there, and then you're gonna have your unordered list that goes into app.jsx, then everything's gonna go into your unordered list component.
Yeah, right. Your tasks are going to go inside your unordered list, and every task has to have a button, right? So that button's inside that other component too. What are they called? Russian doll? The little, like when you pull a doll and then there's another doll inside of it, and then you pull that one and there's a smaller doll. Yeah, that's what this is going to look like. Right? Questions about what you're being asked to do?
Could this be made with separate components though, for like for scaling and things like that?
These are separate components.
Interesting. Okay. My brain's not catching that.
So they're all individual components. They just happen to be nested because of the nature of this small little app. But they're individual components, right? Like if I style a checkbox, it's not going to have any impact really. That styling of that checkbox is not really going to have any impact on the task or the unordered list. It's just going to affect the checkbox because that's an independent component.
I understand now.
Any questions about this? Do you guys typically take like 10 or 15-minute breaks, or how does it work? I should probably just make my own rules, but I just want to see what you guys have been doing.
We usually put us in the breakout rooms, and then, I mean, we work on it on our own. We come back to you if you have questions, take breaks if we need to.
All right, cool. So awesome. So definitely take a break. Try to be back at 6:40. I'm going to open the breakout rooms, jump into a breakout room by yourself, get started, and I'm going to jump around all the rooms and see kind of how everyone's progressing. And depending on how people are doing, I might bring you guys back and then work on a little bit of this app together, or kind of let you guys run with it, depending. Does that work?
Sounds like a great strategy.
All right, guys, take a break. See you shortly. I'll open up the rooms.
Can I ask you a real quick question?
Yeah.
So one way I learn new languages and things is I look at something that's been done by another developer and I try to backtrack it and kind of reverse engineer it a little bit. One thing I'm having a really hard time with React is understanding the data flow. And it seems like it's very scattered, or it's used in some places, not in some places. I'm having a real hard time like following the order of things as the data goes through the application. I don't know if you have any like, I don't have a specific example in front of me to show you, but like, I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, I actually do understand what you're talking about. Eventually, when you get it like into an enterprise level application, they're going to have Redux to manage state because React applications are exactly what you're describing. Incredibly unwieldy and hard to manage, especially the
Okay,
state
so
of a really big application. So we don't get into Redux. I'm pretty sure we don't get into Redux here, but eventually that's what it was created to handle, exactly what you were describing. We won't go that big here. But that's normal. And I don't have an answer for you except just to try and focus on the very simple things we're teaching here. Typically, your application won't grow to be the size where it'll be unmanageable.
Okay, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to follow like how this application was working and running it through the debugger, and I was like, what in the world is actually occurring here?
Yeah.
Okay.
So on day one, I don't know how much Jordan got into like, hey, like if you go into the index HTML, this is line 11 is where it hooks in, but what's being rendered is actually JSX. Like all that, if you understand it, awesome. You might get an interview question if you like interview for a front end developer role about that. But for right now, I just kind of ignore it. Just worry that everything's being rendered in here in your app.js. Your components are created inside a source. And for right now, that's enough. It's actually kind of really important that you try not to go too wide and just go really deep on the small things that you're learning right now.
Yeah, I'm really bad at that, but I will try.
Yeah. Try to focus on that.
All right.
Alrighty, guys. Take a break. We'll be back shortly. All right, everyone. I'm going to give it a handful of seconds more, and then we're just going to kind of walk through this a little bit and see if we can make a little bit more sense. Believe it or not, most everyone was more or less stuck on the same spot. So we're going to try to run through at least maybe half of it or a third of it together to kind of give people a little bit more time with it and just a little bit more guided practice here. I lost my timers. I don't. It says 60 seconds, but I don't know what's left. So I'll give it a couple more seconds and then we can get started. And I'm going to try to walk through it. It looks like it looks like we're good. All righty. So here we go. Kind of what I want to do here is pretty straightforward. Give me 1 second. Okay, you guys can see my screen, right? Yes? Someone?
Sorry, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, you can see my hello. We're just gonna walk through all of it. So let's go,
Yeah.
let's build it. All right, so first thing is we can create a component, call it fancy title. Sure, let's do that. Create a component. Feel free to follow along if you didn't get this far. And I'm pretty sure my keyboard is breaking, so I need to buy another one. Let's just call it fancy title. .com, JSX. Okay, so here, just a component, right? Call it fancy title, and what am I going to return here? Let me just return an H2. Why not? Call it a to-do list. Best to-do list. Cool. What am I missing here? I'm missing one thing. I need to.
Export.
Yep. You can export it this way, or you can export it on line 1. It's whatever you feel like doing. I don't think one is better than the other. I always did it this way, so no, sorry about that. I always did it this way, so I'm just accustomed to it. I messed up the autocomplete there. Idle. Oh, I can't spell idle. There you go. Exported it. All right, cool. I created my very first component based on what my pseudocode said. Hey, create a fancy title. Awesome. Now I can do what? I can import it, right? I'm going to import it here and I'm going to have it shown. So this is what? Just fancy title, right? Fancy title. Does this look right? And then instead of this, I can just do my component fancy title. And self-closing, cool. Fast to-do list. So there we go, line 9. Created my first component, fancy title, easy. Now, what do I want to do? You can look at this for inspiration if you want, but what's the next easiest thing to do? We're trying to create a to-do list. So what would be awesome if we had next? You don't necessarily have to go from the list, but what would be the next easiest component? How about, yeah, that's a good question. What's the next easiest component to create? I just created the easiest one, which is just the title.
Input field.
Yeah, there you go. Let's do that. Let's go with input field. So here, I just need an input field. Input field. Nice job. I don't have my names up and my video up. So thank you, whoever that was. So this is super easy, right? I'm going to go with an input field. And this is literally just what it sounds like, just a little input field. Input field. Okay. And what is this going to return here? Just an input, right? Right? It's just an input. And what is this input going to have?
Type
What
of
type of
text.
Yeah, it just type text. Text. Cool. All righty. Let me see if I get something. Nope, don't get anything. What am I missing?
You need to have a on change so it knows to save the value, right?
On change, the user value, that's going to be input, right?
Yeah.
And this is just E. Okay, cool. Set input and then E target value, right? And I'm getting some errors. I'll fix them in a second. This is what, squiggly? Is that what it was? Yep. Cool. Still nothing. Getting closer though.
Gotta export it and also add it to your apps.
Oh,
that sucks.
there you go. Export default input field. Input field, colon, boom. And then I need to, I can do input field here. Input field. Input field. Cool. And pretty straightforward. I can do what? I mean, for right now, I can just bring it in here, right? I know this is not going to be the final product, but I could throw it in here for now, right? Check if it works, right? Oh, that worked, right? So I have two components now. I have a fancy title, best to-do list ever. And then I have an input field, right? I have it right here. Cat sauce. What am I missing? What's my input field missing? Missing something really important.
Button.
Yeah, I need a button of some kind. Definitely need a button here so I can do some things, right? Add to do. Right, I need a button. There we go. Now it's looking pretty good. I can do buy milk, whole milk, buy whole milk, add to do. Okay, it's not doing anything, but that's closer to what we want. Cancel, sorry. All right, what are we missing here on our input field still? I have a button, it's not doing anything now. It needs a what?
On click.
Yeah, it definitely needs an on click. On click, I want it to do something. I want it to run what? I want it to run a function
Get
called
the
what?
task.
Say that again. What do I want here? I want it to run a function on click. What function is that? What would you name a function if you wanted it to add a task or a to-do?
Add task.
Yeah, dude. Add task. Why not? Add task. Cool. There we go. It's going to add a task. All right. Now this thing kind of wigged out a little bit, but it's cool. This looks rightish. On click, I want it to run this function called add task. What are we missing? This looks pretty good. We're missing one thing, I believe. We're missing two things, actually. What's the value of this input? Anyone can tell me? It is a text, but what is it?
It needs to be the target value of what you're typing in there, right?
Yeah, whatever input's being passed into this function, that's going to be the value, because that's what I'm going to capture eventually here, right? Because I'm going to set this input. But look at what we have. We have a couple things. We have an input that's not defined. We have this function. Where is it coming from? Set input. Kind of looks like use state, right? Set input, input, right? And then we have a function called add task. None of those three things are defined. How are they coming into this function?
From other components we need to make.
Kind of, but you could just pass it. All right, so this input field, right? If I have my to-do list, call my input field, I can just get them from my to-do list, right? So I can pass them in as what?
So is this when you get that use state? Use state
Yeah,
function to
this is. So the
grab the
reason,
value?
yeah, it's pretty close to that. I'm grabbing those from use state, but I'm grabbing them actually, and this is the hard part to understand. I'm grabbing it from the to-do list. This is just an input field that's going to be nested inside of a to-do list. So the to-do list is going to call this input field, and it can pass it what? It can pass it some really sweet parameters. Which are those? We already kind of defined them, so we just need to do what? I'm definitely stretching you guys here. I don't expect you to know this. Look at line 6. Input's not defined. Look at set input. We're calling a function inside this function that's not defined. How can we make it defined inside this function? We can define it into the function, or we can pass it in as a what?
We can create a state for it. Pass it
Yeah,
in as a
but
prop.
inputs are, yeah, it comes in as a props actually, and that's actually should have been part of this lesson. So this is not on you. You need to pass them in as parameters, and a prop is just a parameter. So how can we get input, which is a state value, set input, which is a set value function, and add task, which is another function. So we're passing in one parameter. No, we're passing in 3 parameters, but one of them is just a variable definition, and then the 2 others are functions. And we just pass them in as props or parameters. Where would that happen on this function?
I think it's in between the parentheses and
Yeah,
after
when I
equal
just
to.
pass an object with all 3 values in here, right? Remember OOP? Sorry. I was trying to type and talk at the same time. It didn't work. You remember that everything is an object, right? A function is also an object, right? So you can pass a function as an object into another function almost indefinitely, right? It doesn't matter that these 2 are functions. You can pass them in as parameters or props in this case. So that's it. There's your input field. No input, set input, and add task on is instead as function. But since input field is part of my to-do list container, I can just pass them in. Questions?
So you're gonna make those outside of this input
Yes.
field component? You're gonna
Yeah,
make
because
an input, a set input, and an add task?
yeah. But remember, those are all values that are going to be set at my to-do list container level, not at my input field level. So I can just pass them in because it's like the mother component, right? Input field is part of my to-do list. So I can just pass them down. So notice what happened. Now it reloaded and it works. Well, it doesn't work, but I can do by milk. Let's check that button. Ooh, it's not working still. Hey, why don't we inspect it? Check what's happening. I don't know what's happening. Let's look. So these are my errors. What's the error telling me?
Yeah, those functions aren't defined.
Yeah, they're not defined yet because I haven't created them, right? They will be. They're just not right now. So there you go. I got the 2 easiest components out of the way. I got fancy title, which just returns an H2, and I got the input field. Sweet. Now let's go back to app. This is not exactly the screenshot that I showed you, but we're going to get there. Let's do it piecemeal here. So we got fancy title. We have input field. What's the next easiest thing to do here?
Probably the checkbox, radio button, whatever you want to do to get it to delete.
We could, except we haven't even
We-
added it to the list yet.
I think we need the list next so that we can add this item to the list.
Okay.
The list
So-
component.
Okay,
I don't have that.
let's try to do that. So let's go here. Let's go to-do list here. Oh, it's not total list. Rename to-do list. Let's go to-do list here. Okay, cool. And this is just like always, I can spell just to-do list. Just a simple to-do list. Boom. I'm going to do something there. I don't know. Then I'm going to export default to-do list. Cool. There you go. That's my to-do list item. That's my, I think I'm going to be importing some stuff, so I'll space it out. So function, to-do list, export to-do list. Okay, what is this to-do list going to do? Refresh this, cool.
It's
What do
going
we
to
want?
display the items that we need to do.
Yeah, so very good. So it is going to have to display the items that we have, but if we check input list here, right? We know that at some point we're going to need these functions, set input, add to do, and input, right? So we're going to need this. So let me copy this. Let's go to to-do list. And I know that this somehow needs to appear in this list, right? Because I'm passing it to input field. And that's what to-do list is. Input field is inside of to-do list. So at some point, these values on line 3 need to be defined, right? So let's take it one at a time. Let's start with input. Input is kind of describing what? It's definitely use state, and it's not a number, but a what?
It's a string.
Yeah. Which string is it? Do you know? There's really only one. Which is it? It's the user value, right? It's whatever I type in here by milk. We need to keep track of what that is. What's the state of that value, right? Because whatever the state by milk on the add to do button click, I need to capture that value. And we're going to set it initially as an empty string because we don't know what the user is going to type in. But the minute that he types something in and someone hits the to do, it's going to capture by milk or whatever the user inputted, right? And it's going to reset that state because we're going to need to hold on to that value because we're going to add it to the list, right? So there you go. We've accounted for this one and we've accounted for this one. Boom. Before we move on to add tasks, there's another state that we need to set. Does anybody know what that is? Remember, this is a to-do list. So there's one more state that we need to set here. Actually, it makes sense if I put this first, actually. We need one more. Which is it? Remember, it's a to-do list.
Would that be the empty array?
Yeah, it needs to be an empty list, right? We don't know how many tasks or to-dos and then set to-dos, right? There's going to be, but we know that this is a to-do list, right? And it's going to be empty initially because we don't know how many's in there. Well, there's nothing initially, but eventually we need to be able to add a bunch to it, right? So I know that I have these two states. So to-dos and set to-dos, one of us an empty list, right? And this is what the user value initially set to nothing, right? But I'll capture whatever the value is on button click. Cool. And now I'm back to this. I got both of these values and I can pass them in to wherever they need it, but I don't have this function. And that we need, right? So what do we need here? We need a function that does what?
The return statement. Are we there yet?
Not quite. We need the add task function, right? because that's what our button click is eventually going to do. So what is this function? What is it supposed to do?
Add it in the array.
Yeah, set to dos, right? Is going to set to dos. And this is actually a really important thing about React, right? Immutability. You don't want to alter any lists. So you want to create a new one. So we're going to destructure the list. I forget what it's called. What's the one with the dots? It's not, I keep thinking Python, list comprehension, but that's not what it is. It's 3 dots in JavaScript. Destructuring. If anyone knows a word, help me out. Destructuring. I forget what
Like
it's called.
spread or something.
Yeah, spread operator. There you go. It's the spread operator. You are right. Here we go. This is correct. The spread operator. Thank you. Boom. So there you go. So we're going to do that. And the only thing that that does, it literally creates a copy of your tasks. So that's what we're going to do. To-dos. Right. So we just created a new list that we just passed in right there, right, of the to-dos. And then we're going to add what? We're going to copy everything that's already in there, right? Because we don't want to delete anything. We just want to make a copy of it. And then we want to add what?
The input.
Yeah, just add whatever the new input is. So let's do that. And then we want to do what else to the user input? After we hit the add button, we want to do what to the user input? This buy milk. Do you want to keep it there or do you want to clear it?
Yeah, we want it to set it to an empty string.
Yeah, you want to set it to an empty string again, right? We already took its value and you can clear it. Okay, cool. Set task. Awesome. All right. So now we're to the return part. What are we returning? What do we have to return?
The
Yeah.
list.
We need to return a list.
Like all the each to do or add it. Return the everything that we've added. The updated lists.
Yeah. So this is going to get a little weird here, right? When we want to return which component? The to-do list is going to return what? Let's call it list items for now. List items. All the list items, it's going to return them, right? This is what we're going to return. List items. Cool. For now. We don't have that defined. We haven't written it. That's okay. Let's do that. I'm all messed up. Okay, we're going to return list items there. Cool. Let's refresh. Let's try buy milk to see what happens. We buy milk. And we're going to hit to do, check what error we get. No new error, right? But this is not quite right. But this is pretty close. Okay, cool. So we're going to return list items. What is the list items? Or should I do items list? Items list. Maybe that makes more sense. What's going to be passed to the items list? Let's just leave it like that for right now. Items list. Cool. What goes in an items list? That kind of gives you a little hint of what's the next thing that we're going to create. What's the next thing that we're going to create?
Another component.
Yes. Wait, what am I missing here? Add task. Give me 1 second. Input field. Sorry, I'm confusing myself. Give me a second. So we have our fancy title. We have our input field. We have our to-do list. Actually, we're going to figure this out here. We're missing something, actually. We're going to go to items list here in a second. We need to return what in to-do list. We're going to start kind of clearing this up a little bit to a point where we only have to-do list here, right? So in to-do list, I am going to import fancy title. I'm going to import fancy title and input field into to-do list, right? So I am going to import fancy title and, oh, should have gone to the end of the line, it didn't. And input field. Input field, there you go. And here I can do fancy title and input field. Oh. There you go. What error am I getting here? What's wrong here? I'm missing a lot.
Field is spelled wrong.
Huh?
Input field is spelled wrong.
Field. Besides that. Oh, good catch. I'm
They
missing
need-
all.
They need to be all in one container.
Yep. Div. For right now. That'll work. That should work. Yep. All right. Boom. There you go. For right now. So I imported fancy title, input field, and items list. I know we don't have items list yet. That's okay. We're going to get it here in a second. Fancy title is standalone, but input field, right? We want to add something to input field. What do we want to add to input field? We can actually even look at it. Give me 1 second. Input field is going to take what parameters or props? I'm showing you this specific page for a reason. All right, let's look at to-do list. Input field is going to take some parameters. What parameters is it going to take if I show you input field?
Are you talking about the input, set input, and add task?
Yep. So you know that, hey, input field, this component needs access to these 3 things. So just give it to them. So here, and it just goes input, set input. And it's just convention. I think you might be able to call it something else, but to name it the same thing. Set input and add task. There you go. Takes those 3 things, right? Items list will leave as is. We're good. Let's see if we get a new error here. So we know that to-do list now has this function, right? So this button click should have access to do this now, right? So let's look. We can buy milk, right? It says set input is not a function. Okay. Hit the button, nothing. Okay. It says set input, an input field. Let's look at it. Input field is not a function. What do you think is happening here?
Do we need to add it to the app.jsx?
Do we need to add it to the app.jsx? No. All right, this is input field right here. Input field set input field type text, value input, on change, set input. That works. On click, add task, add to do button, export input field, and on to do list, right? We imported fancy title. We've imported fancy title, input field, input, set input, add task, add task. Is that wrong? Did I change it? Add task, add task. No, that's right. Add task. Nope, that's right. It says set input is not a function.
I have a question.
Yep.
For that input saying it's not a function, is it because we haven't declared it here? Because even though it's being used in the other file, that's only local to that file there, right?
Um,
And not in this case, because in this case, set input is going to be for this, and it's only passing in an empty string with the return parts. So that set input is coming from the add task. Is that right?
yes. Well, set input is just coming from use state here on line 8.
We're using that same thing in the input field, right? And it does look like it's a function on line 7.
On line 7,
Input field though, on the input field, you're on the to-do list.
oh, input field. Here we go.
Line 7 there, isn't that being used as a function?
Yeah, set input is being used as a function here. Is this wrong? Give me a second. This looks right. Input field, set input e target value. That looks right. Add task, on click, add task, add button. Yeah, that's looks right. Right?
I think I ran into this issue too. I don't think you can use set input as a prop unless you put it into like a function in the
Set,
to-do list component.
yeah,
And
set.
then pass that down as a prop.
Okay. Alrighty. I'll tell you what we're gonna do. We're gonna pause right here. I'm gonna look into this. Let's take a 10-minute break. I know we've been going kind of long. Let's take a 10-minute break. Let me fix this real quick, and I'll come back with an answer. I just need to look at it. Give me 1 second. All right, guys. Thank you, whoever that was. Appreciate you. The way that I was rendering the components since I made the switch on the app JSX, and that ended up being the issue. So this actually works. And actually, if I console log here, if I console log this target, it should work on button click. Or actually have a keystroke. If I do buy milk. Whoa, why is that? Okay. Why is that not showing? Console log e target value.
Maybe because it's not setting the input anymore, it's just logging it, but not setting it in the actual.
Yeah,
input.
give me 1 second. All right, set input. This right here, if I put buy milk and I hit the button, right? It goes away, right? But it's not added, right? It's not added. Can anyone tell me why? And so this works, right? It's added. Actually, oh, I can do this. Console log to-dos, right? I could just console log the to-dos. Let's see what we have. Let's try it. So buy milk. I'm going to hit the add button. I should see console log buy milk, right? Because it's added in theory to the to-dos. And then I should have the user input cleared, right? And what do I get? What do I get?
You mean the array?
Yeah, but what's wrong?
You got the prototype length. There's nothing in it. There's nothing in it.
There's nothing in it. This is what's happening to my buy milk.
So you did add task set to dos, which should update on change. I don't know.
Yeah, it's not adding my buy milk because when I console log that list is completely empty. It should have at least one thing in it, which is the tech of the user input, and it's not doing that at all. Let's look at this code real quick. I think we have a little bit of time. This is fancy title. This is input, set input on the input field, right? And it's adding the task. And if I go to input field and I go add task, add task, right? It should be doing this, and it's not. This is a problem that I am going to leave you with. Thoughts on it? How do we fix this? Where do we go from here?
The container.
What do you mean the container? That's really broad.
Like to add the each list and each to do and
Yes. Right. So let's try this again. This is where I'm going to leave you if you didn't get this far. Buy milk. Right. So far this works. When I hit add to do, right, it's going to console log to dos, and it's going to show an empty list because it's not being added. And then it's going to reset the user input to blank, right? And that's exactly what it does. Okay, so we're not getting the error. So far, this code works, right? But the add task, this isn't working like it's supposed to. So we're missing something. What do you think we're missing? This is actually a really important question here. This is where I'm going to leave you, but what are we missing here?
I want to say some form of appending the list. You're not adding it anywhere.
Yeah, we're not adding it. So I'm running this function called add task, right? But you're absolutely right, Sean. We're not adding it anywhere, right? Because this add task is just trying to add the user input. We notice that it's nowhere to be found, right? I'm copying the to-dos here on line 13. There's nothing in there. Then I'm trying to add this to-do, right? But a to-do is a what? It's a to-do or a task. Do we have a task component? Do we have a task component?
No, I don't think we do.
No, we don't. That's why it's not working. We fixed the previous error. Thank you again. I was sloppy with the app.days next. But when I'm adding this task, there is no task component. That's why it's not being added. That's why it's not being added to the DOM here, because we don't have it. So what's the next step here? Remember this items list? That's going to come into play here shortly. But before we get into the items list on line 23, we need what component?
The task component.
Yeah, we need a task component. Task, task. Oh, I could just call it task.jsx. Okay, let's look at the task component. We have a little bit of time. What is this? What does this look like? What does this task look like?
It has the input, right? It has that value, doesn't it?
Yeah, but before that, we'll get into that in a second. But how do we create this task? Let's call it a task item. Task item. Right, this is our individual task item. So what does this look like? I think a handful of you guys got to this. So what does this look like? It's a what? Just a task item, right? It's a task item. What does it look like? What is it? I'm just going to return a what?
A task.
Yeah, but what is it? Remember, it's a to-do list. So this is just a what? What HTML component is it?
LI. I don't
Yeah,
understand.
it's just a list item, right? It's just a list item, right? Like, oh, item is an actual HTML tag? I didn't know that. Okay. It's a list item, right? And inside this list item, what do we want to add?
The task.
Yeah, we can add, and this is just some random, I mean, you can just call it some task, right? Just call it some task. Okay. Inside the list item though, oh well. We also want, we want the list item to have, how about a delete button? Let's do a button in here, right? And this is just can be delete, just a delete button. There you go. It's just some task, right? Eventually, I just named it task, but eventually we'll give it some other name, right? And we'll have a button called delete, right? Task item, right?
Gucci.
Okay. So we have a task item. Now what do we want?
You got to bring the input field into there.
The input field? No. This is just a task item, right? It can have a button. It can have like some kind of like logic where, you know, you can click on it and it can be like cross. You can do like a line through to signify an item that you completed but don't want to delete. But this is a standalone item. So for now, it can just stay like that, right? So we can go back to our to-do list. right? Right. So let's go back to our to-do list.
But why wouldn't the line item need the actual input as far as that text? Why?
The task item doesn't have the text, like buy milk and take out the trash.
Yeah, like that's what I
No, it
look.
will. It
What?
will. Just for right now, let's just leave it simple. It
Oh,
will at one
okay.
point.
Okay.
Right, because list items are all the same except for the props that they have, right? Which is the name of whatever the task is. Buy milk, take out the trash, whatever. Right? But for right now, let's just leave it like that. Right.
Okay.
I want to go back to my to-do list. Right. And I want to do what? So I have my item. I have this task item. Right. I have a fancy title. I have this input that has a button in it. Right. And now I need, what do I need? So on line 23, I need this items list, right? That's where my tasks are going to go. Look at line 21. We have our fancy title, right? Right here. Yes.
Yes.
We have our input field that includes a button. It's right here, right? Now we need our list items, our items list, right? So there we go. We need this items list where everything's going to be populated, right?
Task item.
Yeah, the task item is going to be in here, right? But first, right, I need to, let me go ahead and import it even though I don't have it. Import items list from items list. Cool. So now I've imported it. Obviously, I'm getting flagged because it doesn't exist yet. Now I need a component. Items list. And in here, we're going to have our tasks, right? Our task item. All right, what does this item list look like?
A list.
Yeah, it's just going to be some kind of list. Function, items list, right? Some kind of list. We're going to export default, path, no, items list. Getting confused with the names. Cool, 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 cool. But we know that what's going to be in here. What am I going to have to return here? We just created it. So I can go ahead and go ahead.
A task item?
Yeah, so let's import it. Task item. We know that this has to be returned here. Task item. There you go. Boom. We know that this is returning. We don't know what this logic is already. Oh, we do. It's going to return. It's going to return a task item at some point. It has to. Right? But items list is what kind of HTML element? If task item is a list item, then items list is a what?
Unordered list?
Yeah, it's an unordered list, right? So let's go ahead and do that. It's an unordered list that we're going to return, right? And inside this unordered list, and I know I'm doing it a little out of order, but we know that this is going to be in there somewhere. So I'm going to return an unordered list, right, of some task item, right? Awesome. Cool. All righty. Anybody have an idea of what to do next? Oh, let's go back to there. What happened here? Can anyone tell me what happened in my little UI? It kind of leads me to kind of points to what I believe Michael said. He's saying, "Hey, why are you hard coding the task?" You see what happened? I hard coded it, right? It's called task and has a delete button. And now I'm displaying it in items list, right? Inside an unordered list. That's why I have the bullet point. You think the delete button works?
No,
Why not?
we don't have a code that we
Yeah.
tell it to delete. I mean,
There you go. Yeah, it's not a trick question. There is no code, right? That's going to delete
you
it, or
just
even
you just
just
named the
called it
button that is
delete.
called to delete. I mean,
Yeah,
it's not gonna
it's not
do
going to
anything.
work. It's not going to do anything. Yeah, but we know that, hey, is this starting to look like a to-do list now? Yeah, right? This is starting to look like a to-do list. Yes, this is hard-coded, not quite right, but that's okay. I just wanted to show it for now. This looks pretty good. This looks like a to-do list column. Here, this is an unordered list. Think about what this is going to do. It's going to add task items to this list in an unordered manner, right? So this is going to have to be a what? Anyone?
Ask the question again, please.
Yeah, so think about what this is going to do. I'm going to go back to my UI. This is hard coded, so kind of ignore this. But if I write buy milk, I write buy milk, and I hit this add to do, what's going to happen on the button click add to do?
It should update the unordered list.
Yeah, it should update the unordered list, add a task item to that unordered list. So it's going to run a function and add a to-do item every single time, right? So here, let me see if I don't want to mention it unless it's in here. I'm pretty sure it is. Let me look. Let's look at day 2. It's not going to be in here. Okay. I don't see it in here, so I'm just going to mention it to you. So here, I'm going to leave this to you, but look into this. We're going to have to map over the task, right? You're going to have to run this function in here. So that's the next step here. And once you figure this piece out, right, you'll be able to add to this list, right? So this is the key. This is the next step for you. Where a task going to come in? Going to come in through here and pass them in as a parameter. Questions? I just gave you a lot.
Feels like it was a big jump from what we did yesterday to today.
Yes, there's no lie there. Big, big jump. In reality, we need to work on this lesson a little bit because props should be introduced more formally as opposed to me just mentioning it off the top of my, you know, just mentioning because you kind of need it.
Yeah, just seems like the lecture didn't include quite everything. And it also may just be that we did HTML and Java like feels like forever ago. So
Yeah.
trying to remember some of this stuff on top of learning the new aspects of it. It's been a little rough today.
Yeah, the React to me, next to OOP, is probably the second hardest thing in the program, I would say. It's just not working. Let me check day 3 here real quick. Or cut you guys loose here. Oh, this would be slightly helpful. You'll go over props in React, and hopefully this will help solidify exactly what you're doing. Oh, this is a little different. But yeah, this will help. Sorry, I'm just giving a quick run through of this. Yeah, and they go over props as a dictionary. That would have been a little helpful today. But yeah, sorry, that was a big jump, guys. They go over destructuring props here, which don't really need right now, but that would be helpful. And you go over class-based components. Yep. Alrighty, I'm gonna stop right there. Stop the share. See if you can figure this out, because that would actually be pretty awesome if you could. Stop share here. I'll just leave the last couple of minutes for any questions conceptually about this. This is a lot, guys. I know. And I know this is not going to make you feel any better, but when you get to the job, even if you go to a big company, their onboarding program is kind of not great. So they will throw you in the deep end. They'll give you something like this. They'll put you on a project or something. They'll be like, oh, do this. And then you're fighting the internal tools half the time. So you have to learn the internal tools. They just assume that you know them, even though no one ever taught them to you, right? And then on top of that, you have to do your coding. So it's something I don't think anyone really talks about that first year or 2 years as a developer. It's a punch in the face. It's very hard. I should know. I just finished my 2 years, and it was not the easiest things I've ever done. So sorry about that. I know that doesn't make things better, but this job is kind of like that sometimes. Actually, a lot of the time. Questions. I hope I have inspired all of you.
I kind of felt like we were putting so much on that to-do list component. Could we not just put all those in the app? App
Yeah.
script file? Like,
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Yeah, you can. And there's Sean, I'm going to call him out. Sean did something very similar, and it actually more or less worked. Problem with that, it's not modular and it's not maintainable, right? So I made this like kind of big fuss about libraries and frameworks early on. And the reason why, especially when you get to your job, you get pushed into using these either internal or external frameworks or libraries, it's because the code is cookie cutter and it's much more maintainable, right? And anytime you have to go rogue and create any kind of new code, right, that's going to monkey patch two services together, you're going to get a lot of pushback. They're not going to like that. Why? Hard to maintain. And the minute that you leave, no one knows how your stuff works. And you didn't document it, even though you were supposed to. That's a big lie. It's like TDD, test-driven development. It's good in practice, but no one does it. You make your unit test fit your use case if you haven't already figured that one out. But yes, you can. The problem is that the people that come after you is going to be a nightmare for them, and they won't let you do it. And again, you're dealing with very small. You're dealing with like 1 file, 6 files, right? Even a small application at an enterprise level will be, God, I don't know, hundreds of files. Oh, get really good at like searching for features and those shortcuts where you like, I think it's Command or Control, and you click on the function and it takes you to where that is. Get really good at that because that's half the time what you're doing, trying to figure out what function this is, what's getting passed into it, why is my data types breaking, chasing down what's being passed into your function is kind of a big thing that no one ever talks about. Uh, and Sean mentioned it, like trying to figure out how the data flows when you get your first application, like that's kind of like the first couple of days, trying to figure out how all the data works, what information coming into your application, why is it that information? Do you need extra information? Are you short information? Is the information bad? That's something they never tell you. Half those APIs are complete dog shit. So you're getting bad information, and now your application's breaking because what you're feeding into it is not good. Yeah, you got to figure that out too. And guess what? If you tell Bloomberg to fix their API, they're not going to. And sometimes you get duplicate information and you tell them and they don't care. I will stop. Any questions about React, guys? That's kind of how it feels. That's all right, guys. Definitely take some time off. Hit this early tomorrow. I think we have class tomorrow. I'll go ahead and message. I don't know if they message instructors on where you left off. And when you do props tomorrow, that will help because it's a little bit of kind of what you got introduced today. And definitely have tomorrow's instructor. I'll see who it is. Help you finish this one. And actually, I might mess around with it and post a finished product here shortly. Sound good? Don't get discouraged. Don't get discouraged. It'll be okay.
It'll be Thursday, not Wednesday. I know there's a little bug
Oh,
that Tisdale
okay.
found in the calendar. That was corrected.
So classes are Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, right?
Correct. That's normal. Yeah. Unless there's a holiday, then it might get shifted, and Wednesday might be one of the
Okay.
days that we're there.
Gotcha. Sounds good, dude. All right. Have a wonderful day. I'll try to do better next time, guys.
You were great.
Thank you, guys. Have a wonderful day.
You too.